You talked a little bit about something earlier, and if I get too personal with anything, just say, hey, let's not go there. But you were talking about you just took your children back to be with their mom today. You're the one that wants to keep the marriage intact. You do not want to see the family get broken. She has walked off. I don't really care anything about what she has or has not done since then. But my understanding from what you told me is that now she wants the kids. Mm-hmm. And she filed an order to have sole custody, mm-hmm. with you becoming a visiting father every other weekend.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something else along these lines that said, well, you moved down here. Mm-hmm. So you used to live up where you were before. Because of this whole thing with the divorce, you've been impacted tremendously on a financial and on a personal basis. You've moved down here. And because you've had to move, she may be able to use that against you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love my wife, and that's, to me, when we were married, I made that commitment to her before God. And
right.
when God joins two as one flesh, I mean, that, the separation of that is a physical tearing of, of us. And
that's a very good point that you make there. When the two become one, you're not separating two entities. Mm-hmm. You're ripping them.
Yes.
I heard that in the past about some places where they wanted to strike fear in front of a whole community, they would take a person and they would tie them. This is going to sound very graphic and very despicable and everything else, but they would tie up their legs and arms and put them out there and drive vehicles in opposite directions and tear them apart. And that was a warning to everybody in the village: don't you dare cross us. And of course the person was killed, suffered and everything else. But that's what these courts are doing.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the two individuals that have become one, but you also have an entire family.
Yeah.
And they're ripping apart a family. Go ahead.
So she's filed for sole legal and primary physical custody.
Does that involve you paying any money to her as well?
It can.
It can.
Potentially.
Okay.
We haven't made it to that. That. So in Pennsylvania, they look at the divorce as one matter and the custody issue as another matter. They say that they're completely separate. Mm-hmm. How that's the case, I'm not so sure, but it seems to me they're one and the same. But really, I mean, the challenge is that she's not proven any fault at all. So without any fault, they can take away those things. So because of what you mentioned, that what I've done financially, emotionally, physically for my wife, because of my love for her, to reconcile the marriage, because in my mind there's no other option. And in a Christian marriage, that is what it is, and I have to do whatever is necessary, and that's what I've done over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So not only that, but we both come from families of divorce, and I know personally the effects that has on the children, and while we often in our marriage put the children ahead of even our marriage, I realize now that that the marriage and the husband and wife relationship has to even be before the children. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've done in this, is that I've actually agreed over the last year and a half or so to less time with the children, because that was the only way that my wife would withdraw from the court's custody complaint initially. So I was forced to do that. And now, because of that, and having given to the marriage first, now the courts look at it that, well, it's been this way for the last year and a half, so they can continue that.
Yeah.
And continue me not having access to our children even after a divorce. They would actually, they actually would give me, so because I was forced, because of the financial constraints of, to move away, they actually look at that just simply black and white, that, well, you moved away, and
were abandoning
and I was
the
abandoning
kids.
the family, basically, in that sense.
Yeah, and when we talk about the word abandonment, there is in the Texas Family Code 6 fault-based reasons for divorce, and one of those is abandonment. But what no-fault divorce has done, unilateral no-fault divorce, it has now taken away the stigma of the term abandonment. It's now permitted it. It's now given it state sanctioned. In fact, the entire Texas, for Texas, and I'm speaking about Texas here, when you have the insupportability, the allegation of whatever, it's basically, there's none of the faults really come into play. There was an attorney that got up there and testified before the House committee it was 2 years ago, because I saw this in person. I have the video of the whole thing. The judges don't like to write a fault reason into the divorce because they want to protect the children. So now the judge not only is not acting in a ministerial capacity, but is lying.
Yeah.
They are lying completely. And the thing is that if you actually give a fault-based reason, well, if you don't have the evidence, it can be denied because there's no evidence. So the easiest thing to do is say, well, I don't have any evidence. I'm just going to file for no fault. Abandonment would be considered despicable. If you were a father who abandoned your children, you would be called all sorts of things. And yet, in Pennsylvania, as in Texas, as in almost every other state in the country, abandonment has now become a very acceptable thing to do with regard to there being no legal ramifications to it. So the person who's the one who's leaving the marriage, the one who's guilty, the one who's causing the problems, the state will be behind that person. It has taken justice and has just turned it upside down.